Another day, another new Journey lawsuit. What does this latest lawsuit mean for the band and the future and any 50th anniversary plans and any possible chance that Neal and Steve Perry are becoming friends again? It means a lot, I think, but we'll try to parse it out and figure this one out. Welcome back to Pixel Positive Music, where we cover all sorts of music, classic rock, 80s, synth pop, everything in between. This is a community for music lovers to talk about music and the bands that create that music. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button below so you don't miss any of the awesome content. So, let's get into it. So, of course, right after I put out a video talking about how Neal Schon and Steve Perry are working on rekindling their relationship, and how, I had a pretty generally optimistic feeling both about that and about the 50th anniversary of the band, which is coming up next year. Of course, after all that, we find out there is actually another lawsuit going on, this time from Steve Perry against the rest of the band over some trademark disputes. And I'm I found this on Ultimate Classic Rock, and it's been shared at a few other outlets, so we're just going to talk about it and kind of go through the article together and Neal's response. I'm not going to make a real big attempt here at figuring out all the legal jargon, and you're going to see a lot of other channels that cover this, and a lot of commenters try to really go through all this legal stuff. But here's the thing. Legal issues like this are very complicated. They're very nuanced. There's a lot of information we do not have. There's a lot going on behind the scenes. There's going to be a lot of different narratives from each side. That's how these things go. So I'm just going to work with the information that I presently have to talk about how not so much this issue itself, but more so how it's going to affect any potential plans and the future of the band. So let's get into this. So over on Classic Rock, Ultimate Classic Rock, this was published late last night by the Ultimate Classic Rock staff. Steve Perry sues Neal Schon and Jonathan Cain over Journey songs. Steve Perry has filed a petition to cancel trademark registrations for 20 Journey songs filed by former bandmates Jonathan Cain and Neal Schon. Now, if you remember the last video I did, when I was talking about Neal and Steve rekindling their friendship, I talked about how Neal had overcome some legal issues and recaptured Journey's trademarks on their songs. So it seems in this context, the article goes on to say that Perry's petition says Cain and Schon filed to register the songs in 2020 through Freedom JN LLC, which is from my understanding, that's the new business name for the band. After the issue with Ross and Steve Smith, for use on hats, t-shirts, athletic jackets, and other paraphernalia. So the band filed some new trademarks on as related to merchandising, and it seems to me the only reason Steve Perry sued, Perry says that they violate an earlier agreement that stipulates decisions like these must be made with prior written and unanimous consent of all partners, which would include Steve Perry. So it seems that the reason he sued is because this decision was made unilaterally without his involvement. And while Steve Perry has not been a member of Journey since the late 90s, he still is involved behind the scenes with the business, with the finances, and there's obviously a lot of conflicting opinions about that level of involvement, about Steve receiving money from tours that he's not involved in, that sort of thing. It doesn't really do good to speculate on all that because, again, we're just going to hear hearsay and different narratives. We're never going to see a lot of the actual hard, information in a lot of these things, because a lot of these things go on behind the scenes. And even when documents are made public, it's usually very complex, legal jargon. So it is obviously, it makes sense that Steve Perry would be involved in some of this stuff because he was a major part of the band's legacy and creating these songs with the rest of the band, and also helping the band reach its height in fame. So it makes sense that he would want to be involved in some of these situations. I am surprised that he took the route of suing the band over this. It's very interesting, but let's see. The article goes on to talk about how these guidelines remain in place on songs where Perry is the sole credited songwriter, which is not very many, and some group compositions where Perry, I guess, had like a bigger hand in the writing. So in those songs, they would still have to go through Steve Perry for merchandising purposes. And then, let's see, this latest legal dispute follows a huge rift involving former bassist Ross Valory and drummer Steve Smith, which briefly led to competing lawsuits over control of the band. Yeah, that happened back in 2020. We knew about that, and that was another pretty complicated issue that saw longtime members Ross Valory and Steve Smith ousted, which, again, makes sense. They tried to take control of the band. That, you're not going to want to work with people who try to do that, so it does make sense, as unfortunate as it is, that those guys are not in the band anymore. And then finally, Perry's petition also charges Kane and Schon with using false or misleading information and securing the trademarks. So, yeah, it's not great. It seems like the sort of lawsuit that will probably be resolved pretty quickly. The lawsuit itself is not huge. It's just a dispute over trademarks. It's not anything that's going to affect the music. It's not anything that really should affect us, the listeners. The unfortunate thing is that the impact of this fresh dispute, almost 30 years after Steve is out of the band, is that this is obviously going to hurt Neal and Steve's friend, like any sort of relationship that they were maybe building, as one-sided as that now seems. I think we can basically flush all that away, which is really, really unfortunate. As I emphasized in my last video, I think it's very important for these guys to, in their old age, to reach a level of understanding and friendship, because we know that they had that at one point, and it's just sad that it's gone now. But this makes it pretty clear that that's probably not going to happen. And as I stated, I stated in a video a few months ago about Neal was talking about 50th anniversary plans and bringing people back. It's pretty clear that that's not going to involve Steve Perry, which, I mean, I was very optimistic and hopeful in that video. I never thought that it was I never even thought there was a big chance it was going to happen. I thought that if the guys were on good terms, Steve Perry would potentially consider doing like a guest performance in one concert or something, because even Steve is the kind of guy who would recognize the importance of the 50th anniversary. It's why he showed up to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. He didn't even have to show up to that, but he showed up because he knew it was an important milestone for the band. I would think that this is probably not going to happen now, if there's fresh lawsuits going on. And, of course, Neal is not taking this lying down. Neal responded to this in a Facebook comment, which is typical of Neal, to respond in a Facebook comment. That's where he does a lot of his communication these days. So I'm going to read Neal's comment here. What a bunch of total crap. Here's how it goes, friends. John King calls a board of directors meeting out of nowhere. Then before I found out about the meeting, Jonathan came to me and said he didn't like what they, Ross, Smith, Perry, and Herbie, were planning. On that meeting, Steve, Ross, Smith, and Herbie voted myself and Kane off the board of directors, and Steve and all voted Ross in my place and Smith and John's. They all knew at this time I'd been investigating our trademarks for years, trying to get to the bottom of all corruption, as we found, my wife and I, that nothing had ever been trademarked besides our music. So, their music had been trademarked, but none of their merchandising rights had ever been properly trademarked, is what I'm getting out of that. They all went for a takeover, and it didn't work. Quite simple. So that's that. That's the takeover situation. We knew about that. We knew what was going on with that. That's all, water under the bridge at this point. So my wife, Michelle Schon, found a legitimate trademark attorney that wasn't in the corrupt musical circles, and we were then successful in attaining it to protect everything we built. We had been getting ripped off since the beginning until I shut it down. So the question is, why did nobody else's attorneys, Steve's, who was actually ours at one time also, and individual band attorneys and accountants, and other so-called trademark attorneys help us do this? It was a giant corrupted ring of people that either management or accountants hired to work for us, cashing in on all of our merchandise until now. At this point, I decided to go for all album titles as well as song titles. The more we got educated on how songwriting and copyrights have nothing to do with trademarks. You haven't heard the last of this, friends. We are going to peel back the onion. Signed, Neal Schon, Journey lead guitarist, founder, and manager. So, Neal's response is long-winded. Sometimes when Neal posts these long posts, it can be a bit hard to follow. He's kind of all over the place. Neal Schon is, of course, I've praised the guy constantly on this channel, and I will continue to do so. He's an incredible musician. But from a personal standpoint, he has a lot of paranoia about things. And I can't really fault the guy for doing that. He is the only consistent member for this band for 50 years. And he's been through so much with this band, with different control issues, different singers, different managers, different companies, everything. So I get the paranoia. But it makes this kind of hard to follow. He's really going after like different attorneys and different trademark attorneys and calling lots of calls for corruption. So, there's not really a lot of information we can really parse out of this response, I don't think, just because it's not super specific about like what kind of money was lost, what was stolen. There's a lot of accusations. And I'm not saying these things are not true, but of course Neal's not going to air all of these specifics because this is a legal issue. So I think what we can get out of this for this channel is that things are not super great in the Journey camp between the legacy members. Neal and Steve Perry are definitely probably not going to rekindle that friendship. We're probably not going to get any sort of Steve Perry involvement in a 50th anniversary tour. And if this goes on, we may not even get a 50th anniversary tour. We may get something smaller, but it just kind of depends on how this goes. This band has been through a lot of legal troubles. Most of those legal troubles happened when Steve Perry left, but we had some more legal issues recently. Of course, there have been a lot of disputes between Neal and Jonathan Cain in the past 5 years. There's been issues, of course, with Ross Valerie and Steve Smith, and now this new Steve Perry stuff. So basically, I think that it's just really sad, really, at this point. Like I said, other channels are going to really feed into the drama. They're going to boost it. They're going to do a bunch of videos on it. They're going to really dive into this, and more power to them. I'm just, I think it's sad. This channel and this community that I'm building, it's about the music, and I'm trying to take a more positive approach to this stuff, hence the name, because there's so much negativity, there's so much hate and division in the world and so many issues, and music is supposed to be the thing that brings us together. Music is something that anybody from any walk of life, in any situation, they can sit down and listen to music. Regardless of language or regardless of circumstance, music can be enjoyed by everybody. And these sorts of disputes, these sort of problems, they get in the way. Luckily, we still have all the music. We have all the music. We're still getting great music from Journey. So I'm happy that we still have all the music. But from a live perspective, going and seeing these guys live, or, it just gets complicated. And the other thing that this causes is this is going to cause even more division in the fandom. And I don't like to see that either. You can absolutely prefer Steve Perry. I think most of us probably do prefer Steve Perry as a vocalist over any of the others. And you can absolutely just think Arnell is a horrible singer, but you don't have to be nasty about it. And in these situations where it's like Neal versus Steve, we see a lot of sides taken, and really, I get that to a degree because you have the members that you care about and that you're passionate about, but at the end of the day, it's all the same music, and that's what this is really supposed to be about. So I don't want to see like more division in the fans. I really don't want to see that. I find it to be really exhausting. I want to be able to just talk about this music and this band without all these issues always coming up. I mean, you can't. It's so hard to like have a conversation with someone about Journey without the Steve Perry issue coming up, and then that kind of leads into the other singers, and then it leads into Journey today, and it's just, it's hard to have a conversation just about the band without that coming up. It's the same with other bands who've had this problem. It's a really big problem in the classic rock community, honestly, because most classic rock bands have lost some members over the years. Either they've passed away or just issues have happened. And then, of course they happen. These bands have been around for so long. Of course there's going to be issues and lineup changes. But as I said in one of my previous videos, every member who's been in this band is important to the legacy of this band. And it's like that with any band. You can go over to Styx, and they have a similar issue where they have a lead singer who is not in the band anymore. And there's a lot of still, 20 years later, there's still a lot of disputes over that. And you see a lot of division in the fandom. But my argument has always been, regardless of which version of the band you prefer, every iteration of the band, every member is still a part of the band's legacy. Some might be a bigger part of the legacy, but they're still part of the band's legacy. And that is the same here. Regardless of what happens with this lawsuit, Steve Perry is obviously still a massive part of the band. And obviously these guys know that. So it is a shame that we are at this point again with Journey. I hope that they get this resolved. I hope that this does not drag on. And I hope that Neal and Steve can work something out on a personal level. I don't even care if Steve performs with the band again. It would be amazing. It's probably not going to happen. I would put like a 95% chance that it's not ever going to happen. And I hope I'm wrong. I hope they fix this and we have a miracle and Steve Perry walks on stage with this band at one point, one more time in their career, but it's probably not going to happen. But I don't really care about that. I just want these guys to work it out on a personal level because they deserve to retire and not hate each other. It's just what they deserve. They've been through so much. They've given us so much over the years that we should want that for them. We should want them to have a level of peace and understanding of each other. I don't think either one of these people is bad. I think that it's a complicated situation that has been ongoing for years, and that's, I think, the best analysis that us people on the outside here with limited information can give. It's just a complicated situation. So, what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. Of course, please keep it civil. I know that this is kind of going to be a hot button topic in the Journey community going forward as we get more information about this, but please try to keep it civil. I don't want to see any hate in the comments. That's not what this community is about. Try to keep it just more on a neutral or a positive level as far as, I just don't want to see any hate. I don't want to see any trash talking of members of this band because that's definitely not what this is about. This is not one of those channels where we're going to just live on the drama here. We're here to talk about the music and the impact that these things can have on the music and the band's future. So absolutely let me know what you guys think in the comments. And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. We are approaching 300. That's incredible. I'm very happy about that. Let's see if we can get there. And then also, if you like the video, please leave a thumbs up. It really helps the video and the channel get noticed. It helps me out a ton. So I will see you guys at the next video.